Topics which I'm touching on today. One is the black money issue, the other one being the GST, the third one being power sector reforms and the general state of power sector in the country, the 14th Finance Commission recommendations, rising price of the pulses in the country, and the gold monetization and the other schemes which have been introduced by the government with respect to gold. These are the 6 topics, plus apart from that there are a few others which will be taken next week. There will be similar class which will be there on economy. I'll just run you through those topics also. There is one which is going to be there on the general state of the Chinese economy and the slowdown of the Chinese economy and the devaluation of yuan and what is the kind of impact it has been having on, or it could have on, the Indian economy as well as on the global economy. And then apart from that, we'll also be dealing with the Skill India initiative and the entire mission of skilling 1 million people in the next few years, and how is that going to pan out. Plus apart from that, Mayank is also going to touch upon the new GDP methodology and how is it different from the previous one and how is it made a difference. Then there is going to be a topic which is going to take with regards to 7th pay commission and the parity between the services, because that is also one issue which concerns the services as such between the IAS and between the other services. Should there be parity or not, or whatever, and what are the arguments which are put forward by both the sides. And yeah, Mayank, have you covered Trans-Pacific Partnership? Mayank hai wahan? Is not covered trans. So even Trans-Pacific Partnership and the mega FTAs which are being signed now, so that is also going to get covered. Plus apart from that, what I would suggest to you is that if you have any other topics which you feel are really important from the point of view of economics, just reach out to us, or maybe you could, if you have, just think about it right now and we could have a consensus on that. And if there are, say, some 3-4 other topics which you feel you find a little too technical or you feel are going to be really important for the interview point of view this year, just let us know, and we'll surely arrange to incorporate those topics also into the next class, right? Is there any other topic apart from this which you people would want to have covered? One rank, one pension, does anyone want that to be? Because there is a lot of debates. I mean, one rank, one pension per se, what we could do is next time is that we could just have what are the difficulties as such as far as the government of India is concerned in implementing the demands of the soldiers. Even though one rank, one pension has been now declared, but still after that there are a lot of issues which still remain to be unresolved between the soldiers and between the protesting or the soldiers, those who are on whatever, and between the government, right? What else? Any other topic? Analysis of economic survey. Okay, this is a good point. So see, generally we actually have a separate class for the economic survey, and last year also we had like 2-3 sessions for that. But maybe what we could do is that we could have a very short, crisp analysis of what are the real major key takeaways from the economic survey of 2015-16, if whatever important things are there. Anything else?
So budget analysis accordingly.
Budget analysis, okay, right. Anything else? Okay. With regards to budget analysis, I would have a small announcement to make once the session is over. I'll just tell you what you could do possibly with respect to that. Any other topic? Any other topic or koi economics se related? I'm sure I see a few familiar faces, those who have appeared in the mock interviews. So if any of you have any questions which come to your mind which you are not able to say per se answer or whatever in the interview or something like that. Anything else?
Sir, recently one conference was held in Bangalore about agriculture.
Okay. So right. General this thing agriculture, plus there have been a large number of farmer suicides which have been reported from Vidarbh this year specifically. Global economic slowdown, okay, and the crashing of the fuel prices and the other commodity prices, okay. Anything else? So I have analysis of economic survey, budget analysis, agriculture sector and the general state of agriculture in the country, the global economic slowdown, one rank, one pension. Yes. Infrastructure?
So for the government are doing lot of things.
In what sense? For
Like they have changed hybrid annuity model and this is part.
okay, ठीक है, चलो we'll see if that could be covered because that would be too broad a topic. Tell me specific topics.
Kelkar committee's recommendations regarding PPP.
Kelkar committee's recommendation regarding?
PPP.
Okay, yeah, okay, what else? Okay, IPR related. Has that been in news? IPR related?
They will be implementing IPR policy.
Okay, IPR policy, etc. Anything else?
Chinese new banks, can it be an alternative to Bretton Woods?
Okay, so China wala cheez. Okay, are you talking about the ADB, etc.? Okay, okay, AIB, sorry. Okay, ठीक है, fine. Anything else? Seventh pay commission, we are going to take that up, and उसके अंदर major issue actually pay parity और वो सब का है, that we'll take up next time. Anything else?
New ways of raising money for infrastructure projects.
Okay, so fine, that will be related to Kelkar committee and infrastructure, वो कर लेंगे. और कुछ? ठीक है. So let's begin with black money first, and I have not got any slides or any PPT as such. So what I'm just going to do is that I'll run you through a few important points as far as, so that is going to be in a way a synopsis of these notes also. Plus on top of that, if there are any other added perspectives with regards to from the point of view of the interview. First of all, let's talk about black money, right? Now, if interview panel, there are obviously these basic questions that what do you mean by black money? What are the sources of black money in India? Which are the sectors which generate the most maximum amount of black money in India, right? Then what are the solutions which have been taken by the government in the past? What are the solutions which the government has proposed? Why black money is such a huge concern? So I'll write these questions, write down these questions. One is the definition of black money. Okay. The second one is what are the sources, major sources of black money, especially with regards to India, and which are the sectors which give maximum rise to black money or the kind of activities, right? Then the third thing is what are the steps which have been taken by the government with regards to solve the problem of black money in India. Also, there will be one that what is the impact of black money on the economy and why black money is such a big issue. Right, there has to be a reason, and also do not, I mean, when you are preparing for the interview, you have to also go a little beyond the academics and also look into a number of other things practically. For example, if I talk about impact of black money, I think all of you, since I'm hoping that most of the people here would be appearing for the interview, would have a good command over why black money is such an issue for our economy or for any economy for that matter. But you have to also understand that, say, why black money was such a major political issue, right? Why was it such a major electoral issue in 2014? It's not just because that the government suddenly rose up or Narendra Modi suddenly woke up Sunday and decided that we are going to make it a major election issue or a plank for the elections, but because there are certain sentiments and there are certain views and certain ways in which black money is looked at by the people of the country and so on and so forth. So you have to go beyond what is there in the textbooks as far as the interview is concerned, because they are, as far as your knowledge is concerned, that has been tested in the mains now. Now they are trying to look at your perspective on issues, how the way you look at the depth of the issues, and that goes beyond theory, that goes beyond books, and that has to look at to the practical side of the things, right? Then what are the reasons for the failure of the steps which have been taken by the government, and then what is the way forward or way ahead? Okay. First of all, what is the definition of black money, right? So there are two ways, or not two ways basically. The black money could basically be defined in as money which has been unaccounted for, right? So that is also called as parallel economy. Any unaccounted money is black money. Now there could be two major ways of generation of black money. Yes, one could be through illegal sources, one could be involved in extortion or let's say, you know, bribery, or it could be through some whatever ways, right? It could be through numerous illegal ways, could be through selling of the stolen artifacts, or say selling of the arms or selling of drugs, any of these illicit activities can lead to generation of black money. The other way is with regards to exploiting the taxation laws in the country or evasion of taxes, which is a major concern for the country. Because as far as the first one is concerned, Money Laundering Act, and there are Prevention of Corruption Act and the Benami Transaction Act, and there are a number of laws which are there, and that has been substantially reduced in some of the areas in the recent times. But as far as the unaccounted money through the evasion of taxes is concerned, that remains to be a big problem, right? Now, talking about the present government, when the present government had come into power, they had come high on the rhetoric of bringing back black money from the foreign banks and from the foreign countries, and punishing the individuals, those who possess such money outside, right? And there have been certain reasons, or there have been a number of steps which have been taken by the government after that. Can you name some of them?
Black money prevention.
So there is a black money, yes. So there is a Black Money Act which was which has been introduced. What else? So it's called the Black Money Undisclosed Foreign Income and Assets and Imposition of Tax Act 2015, right? Anything else? Greater transparency. Anything else? Any other particular bill or pending law? The Benami Transactions Bill 2015, which was not passed in the parliament. Anything else? Regulation of P notes. Okay, what else?
Negotiation with the banks.
Negotiation with the banks outside, getting into some sort of a diplomacy with the people outside. Okay, what else?
Internationally, exchange of some agreements.
Agreements, etc. Okay. So see, I mean, the biggest single measure which had been introduced by this government was the introduction of the Black Money Act, or the Black Money Bill in the Parliament, which subsequently became the Black Money Act, which I said, that Black Money in Undisclosed Foreign Income and the Assets and the Imposition of Tax Act 2015. Now, what has been the reality? I am not going into the other details of black money in terms of what are the sources of black money and this and that and all that. You could just cover through them. Which are the two major sources of black money in the country? Which are the two major sectors? Real estate and bullion, education, coaching industry remains to be one of the largest generators of black money in the country, right? And these are two, and then apart from that, another way in which the domestic black money is generated in the maximum way is the exploitation of the ministerial controls. It is through coal block allocation or 2G spectrum or some CWG games or some other allocation of natural resources or some award of a contract or public procurement or something like that. So these are the two major sources. The governmental one remains to be the ministerial control and excessive control of the government over the resources and over the economy, and the second one is the real estate sector, right? Now then what steps have been taken? So again, you could just look into steps taken. Say, the reason I am not going into all that information kind of thing for this topic is because that is available at a lot of places. We'll just go into try and understand what are the reasons for the failure of the steps which have been taken by the government. And so there are measures which have been mentioned, like tax reforms have been introduced, removing of currency after the certain time, and legislative framework, international cooperation, blah 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 blah, and all of this. So you could just go through this, and does not really add a lot of value in that sense. Okay, so now the first one is, let's talk about why did the Black Money Act or the steps taken by this government have failed. Why do people keep coming back and say कि 15 लाख कहाँ है हमारे account में, right? And people, that's one of the most frequent political jibes which is taken on the ruling government. Now, one of the things, if you look into the numbers, the amount of money which has been recovered through the imposition of this tax, and there was an amnesty scheme also, as it was called by the finance minister of the country, which was introduced, and the total amount of recovery which took place through the amnesty scheme was 370,000 crores, So this is, sorry, 3,770 crores, okay. 3,770 crores, I'm sorry. So 3,770 crores is the figure which had been recovered through this. And actually if you look at this, इसके अंदर एक और interesting चीज़ है that only 60% of this was to get recovered in a way. I'll tell you why. Because this was the amount of money which had been disclosed by people, those who possessed this much amount of money, that is 3,770 crores, and उनके ऊपर penalty लगनी थी 30% और 30% tax rate. अदरवाइज गवर्नमेंट ने डिक्लेयर किया था कि अगर किसी के भी अकाउंट में, इफ एनी वंस अकाउंट आउटसाइड द कंट्री और एल्सवेयर इज फाउंड टू बी इन पोजेशन ऑफ एनी अनडिक्लेयर्ड वेल्थ, then there will be a taxation rate of 120% and there could be a jail of up to 10 years. Okay, now these are very stringent provisions which had been introduced by the government in the act, and perhaps one of the reasons because of which this scheme failed completely. Now why do I call it a failure? If you look into, there was an amnesty scheme which was introduced by the finance minister in 1997 also, the erstwhile finance minister of the country, Mr. P. Chidambaram, and the recovery at that point of time was, believe it or not, 33,000 crores in the year 1997. ठीक है, पहले तो 33,000 करोड़ के ऊपर अगर आप कंपाउंडेड इन्फ्लेशन ऑफ 1.7% 8% लगा के देखोगे तो ये जो फिगर है ऑलरेडी आपका 60-70,000 करोड़ पहुंच जाएगा आज की डेट में. वन इज दैट. सेकेंड इज फ्रॉम 1997 टिल 2016 India's economy has almost grown by 10 times. Almost 10 times. So what that means is that this, if you would have looked at it roughly, this amount of 33,000 crores should actually have been into 10 in 2016 or 2015. That is, it should have been close to 3 lakh crores. Or even if one would look at it conservatively, we should have had a recovery of at least a lakh or a 2 lakh crore from this amnesty scheme. But as the figure suggests, we were only able to recover close to just 4,000 crores of money. Right? So what were the reasons which have been put out for it? One is that the rate which had been proposed, the 60% penalty which you are putting. So there was 30% penalty and 30% tax rate at which you had to give the money. So for example, if I am someone who has 10 crores of unaccounted money and I go and tell the government that okay, I have unaccounted money, so I'll have to actually give out 6 crores out of that, and that hardly makes a lot of sense, especially in case of high value people. For example, if someone has undisclosed money of say 3,000 crores or 1,000 crores, or let's say even 100 crores outside the country, now that person would have to forego almost 60 crores of his wealth. He would rather go and bribe someone in the government for say 30 crores or 40 crores or 50 crores and get away, rather than paying 60 crores as a tax or to the government and then get, be a part of this amnesty scheme. One is that. Second is that the finance minister had promised that the tax officials with only probity would be made a part, or with a proven record of probity and integrity and honesty would be made a part of this amnesty schemes, and they would be the only ones, those who will be looking into this amnesty schemes. But all of this merely remains to be a directive and not necessarily a legal measure. There is no measure which is there in the law that the identity of the person who comes and submits his accounts to the government would remain undisclosed. Therefore, a person might face a double whammy. One, that he might have to give 60% of his wealth, and the second and the most important one being that his name might just get leaked out in the public domain and therefore tarnishing his reputation also. Right? Also, another problem is that the government in a way has actually failed to realize that the real problem with the black money in the country is not just about corruption. It's not just corruption which leads to the accumulation of black money in the economy. Before 1990s, there was a lot of black money which was generated in this country, and a major source of that black money which was generated before 1991 reforms was that there were very poor taxation laws of the government of India, and in order to evade them, a lot of businessmen had to actually generate black money, or black money was a natural outcome of that licensing regime and of the entire era of restrictions which were put on the businesses at that point of time, right? One is that. Second is that also that now you have put in 60% and so on and so forth. What might just happen is that एक तो आपके दो तरीके के लोग हुए जिनके पास ब्लैक मनी है, एक जिनके 1991 से पहले जनरेट हो गई थी. So in a way they do not feel that they were at fault at that point of time, and therefore they do not want to give away the 60%. They rather feel that we'll take this risk. Let's see if we get caught or not. And the way the government and the entire bureaucracy and the court function in India, it's going to take a lot of time for things to get proven. And we would have enough money under our belt to actually evade it by paying bribes here and there through the entire system, rather than actually losing 60% of our wealth. One is that. The second category of people, those who have come in post 1991, the businessmen or the entrepreneurs or the enterprises or these big short people, what might just start happening because such a stringent law coming into place, where you have such stringent measures, these people might just start moving out of the country. This is also one of the fears. True or not is another thing, but I am just giving you a perspective. Okay, you could always have your own opinion on this. But people might just start moving outside the country, start setting up businesses outside the country, and then directing money from there into the country. So they might just take all their wealth outside, set up enterprises outside, somewhere in the Cayman Islands or Mauritius or somewhere in Bahamas or somewhere, and then tried routing money from there, right? Apart from that, even the so someone was talking about the agreements that we have got into. We have got into an agreement with the United States of America. Right, one of the successes of the present government as far as diplomacy is concerned. But what has happened is that the Swiss authorities, even though some news reports say that there have been names which have been disclosed to the government, there have been confessions which have been made on the floor of the parliament, but not a lot has happened on that front as far as the disclosure of the names of people, those who have foreign accounts outside. Plus, merely having foreign accounts outside the country is not a crime. Merely having a Swiss bank account is not a crime, but the problem is that you have undisclosed money out there in those foreign bank accounts. But even nothing has moved much on that front, right? And plus, a lot of people say that this is actually not an amnesty scheme, but more like a punishing scheme, right? So, and also the government in a way has failed to realize that one of the major reasons pre-91 and even till today for the generation of the black money remains to be poor policy as well as poor policy implementation. Now, what are some of those poor policies? Does anyone know what is the stamp rate which is there in India for the transaction of the properties? It's very less. Very less. Very less with compared to whom?
In comparison to the exact property that you sell or purchase. That's what we officially show.
That's not stamp rate. Stamp rate कितना है? High stamp rate समझते हो? Stamp rate क्या होता है? जब आप कोई प्रॉपर्टी की ट्रांजैक्शन होती है, so you have to pay some amount to the government, right? You have to pay some amount to the concerned authority, and that remains to be very high in the country. And now what happens because of that is that the properties in the country are not transacted at the market rates. So what I mean is that, say if there is a property for 5 crore rupees, right, and the market value is 5 crore rupees, the circle rate for that property would, or the circle rate or the rate at which the transaction for the government would be shown would be close to 50 lakh rupees. Okay, that's the kind of scenario which is there, say in Delhi NCR, and these are almost exact numbers. So 5 crore worth property would be shown to the government as just a transaction of 50 lakh rupees. So I'll be selling my property to some X person which is worth 5 crores. This person has to give me 5 crores. But when we'll go to the registrar authority, will just show an amount of 50 lakh rupees. The reason for that is because the stamp duty in this country hovers anywhere between 10 to 20% of the amount transacted. That means if the market price of my property is 5 crores, I have to almost shell out somewhere between 50 lakhs to 1 crore and give it to the government. And that does not make sense business wise. Now this has two impacts. One, the transaction rates which are given or shown to the government are significantly lesser, and therefore the rates at which the property are transacted is lower, and therefore the tax given to the government is less, right? So anyways, having high taxation rates defeats the entire purpose. If you would have had it 1 or 2%, people would have at least not really bothered. They would have said कि 5 crore का property बिक रहा है, let us show it properly and 10 lakh रुपया दे देते हैं government को. Right now what happens is 50 lakhs is shown, I get 5 crore rupees in my account, 4.5 crore of that would be actually unaccounted black money. And this is how the cycle continues. Now I'll have this 4.5 lakh crores, I'll go and buy some property, I'll go and give it to someone, then again this chain would continue indefinitely, right? So this is one impact. The other impact is that because of this, you also lead to the stagnation in the transactions in the real estate market in the country. What I mean is, अगर आप 10% या 20% का stamp duty rate रखोगे, stamp duty रखोगे, आपकी transactions उतनी ही कम होंगी market में, right? If it would have been, let's say, 0.5% or 1% or 2%, the fluidity in the real estate market would have been more. The real price discovery would have been better. There would have been better transparency which would have been there. The supply and demand would have matched better. Therefore, you would have been able to provide housing to a large number of people, right? So this is where the entire problem comes from. So therefore, taxation rates in this country which are very high, even though in the last budget the government had proposed that the corporate tax would be reduced from 30 to 25% over a period of 4 years, right? That also remains to be very high when you compare it globally. There are a number of studies and newspaper articles which will tell you कि यहाँ पे इतना है, उतना है, इतना है, all that. But if you look at the global rates, they are nothing more than 15 to 17%. We still remain to be, our target also still remains to be significantly higher, right? So the taxation regime in the country is actually one of the reasons because of which evasion of black money or evasion of taxes happens. Because people feel that the taxation rates are so high, whether it is the indirect taxes or the direct taxes. If you would know, pre-1991 during Indira Gandhi days, taxation rates used to be almost 100%, right? So people had to forgo almost all amount of whatever income they would have over a certain cap, and they were ridiculously high, and therefore that discouraged a lot of businessmen to come out in the open and actually be transparent about their transactions. And to a large extent it still continues till the date, right? So what are the solutions to be able to curb this entire problem? So if you look at it, your amnesty scheme has failed. You promise that you will be able to get this much amount of money. What has actually happened is that you have just got peanuts, 3,700 crores. That's all you've got in terms of the amnesty scheme, right? Plus apart from that, no other big ticket scams have been unearthed. Perhaps maybe because of the fact that this government has been able to bring in more transparency and accountability into regime, or perhaps that a lot of things have been swept under the carpet, no one knows, right? So what are the solutions? One is that you need to understand that you need to rationalize the tax regime in your country, right? This is one very practical step which can be suggested as an administrator by you, that there has to be a rationalization of tax regime, especially in the real estate sector. See, there has to be a reason why real estate sector is one of the largest generators of black money in India. It's not that people in the real estate sector have taken it upon themselves to generate the largest amount of black money. The reason for that is that the taxation rates remain to be ridiculously high. That needs to be rationalized. One is that. Second is that you need to bring in computerization of land records and property and this and that, not only in the urban areas of the country but elsewhere also, in order to bring in more transparency and accountability in the real estate sector, right? The third important step or measure which could be taken is with regards to the electoral reforms. Elections remain to be a prime reason for which black money is generated in India. It is not a source, it is a reason for which black money is generated. I hope you all understand why. Because the amount of money which you can spend and show to the election commission is paltry. But the amount of money which you have to actually spend in the elections ranges from anywhere between 8 to 10 crores per constituency. That too, these are conservative estimates. So all of this has to come from unaccounted sources. So therefore, in order to win an election next time, you have to start your groundwork right from the day one you get into your office as a minister. Because you have to get money for your party, you have to get money for yourself, and this and that, and so many things, right? So electoral reforms, that is another area which needs to be taken, can be suggested as a solution by you. State funding of election also could be suggested as a solution. Although what might just happen is that once you suggest state funding, there might be counter questions. Acha, state funding kya hota hai, batao. Then how is state funding going to help, and so on and so forth. So be a little careful about that. Then a well-designed amnesty scheme. See, if an amnesty scheme way back in the 1997 could actually generate 30,000 crores, there is no reason why the amnesty scheme which was made by the government today could not have generated, as I said, say close to 1 lakh crore or 2 lakh crore. But that has not happened. And one of the reasons for that is, as I said, that this amnesty scheme has actually been called as a punishing scheme by some of the people, right? Okay, and then the capital inflows in the country. So someone said that now there has been regulation of the P notes in the country. Now again, be very clear in the interview on any particular remark or comment which you make. Please do not make a very loose or a unsubstantiated remark. I'll tell you why. Regulations have been introduced, very nice. In last 7 years, last year we witnessed the highest inflow of money from P notes in the country, and that was 2.72 lakh crore rupees. I hope all of you know what P notes are, right? 2.72 lakh crore rupees of money came into the country through the P note route last year. And therefore, whether there has been a regulation which has been introduced by the government or not, it has been a complete failure, right? So therefore, you need to bring in a little more transparency and need to ensure that the capital flows which are coming into the country from outside are also managed and regulated properly, especially the ones coming through the P note routes. 2.72 lakh crore is a huge amount, and as I said, this is the largest, this is the 7-year high which we have witnessed last year, right? And yes, and then another thing is that in order to control the other sources of domestic black money, something which I talked about, the ministerial control and the ministerial level corruption, there in a way government has taken some really good steps, whether it ensures that there have been a large number of bills which have been introduced to ensure there is a proper coal allocation policy in the country. The public procurement procedure in the country has been improved, and so on and so forth. Large number of transparency measures. Just read about a few of them. Some transparency measures and good governance measures and e-governance measures which have been introduced at the state as well as the center level in order to deal with the problem of black money, or especially with the problem of corruption, right? So talk about a few of those things. So this is basically as far as why such a huge rhetoric and everything and all of it has come down, fallen flat on its face. And second being that why and or how this entire problem of black money could be solved in a more practical way. So you could talk about these 4 or 5 measures. Plus apart from that, a few of the other things, as I suggested, that do look into what is the impact of the black money on the economy. I hope all of you know that. Black money की definition basic एक थोड़ा सा याद करके चले जाना, so that they just ask you could spur it out.
That the amount of money that has been accumulated in the foreign accounts, even if you bring it back, you cannot prove it that it is a black money, it is from wealth. How do we counter that?
Sorry?
Suppose a huge amassment of wealth has been kept in the bring it back into the country, how can you claim it that it is a form of black money?
Black money is if it's not been disclosed by that particular person, it's black money. So see, obviously उस आदमी ने टैक्स दिया होगा ना भाई. अगर मेरा 500 करोड़ रुपया बाहर पड़ा है एंड इफ आई हैव नॉट डिस्क्लोज कि मेरे पास 500 करोड़ रुपया है, कोई तो मेरे पास प्रूफ होना चाहिए ना मैंने 500 करोड़ रुपया कमाया है. दैट्स हाउ यू प्रूव और डिसप्रूव इट. यू गेट इट?
Or you cannot tell it like the transactions have been made outside the country itself.
नो, सो देयर मस्ट बी अ रिकॉर्ड ऑफ इट, राइट? आपका अगर ट्रांजैक्शन आउटसाइड द कंट्री है तो ठीक है, अलग बात है, बट आप फॉरेन नेशनल थोड़ी ना, आप इंडियन हो ना. आपने जो भी पैसा बाहर भी कमाया है, यू हैव टू अकाउंट फॉर इट हेयर इन द कंट्री भाई. दैट्स योर इनकम. ऐसा थोड़ी ना कि बाहर कमाया तो वहीं का वहीं रहेगा, ऐसा नहीं. यू अर्नड इट देयर और हेयर और वेरेवर, यू हैव टू शो इट एज यू हैव टू पे इनकम टैक्स टू दिस कंट्री. ठीक है? यस.
How is that we managed to get 3 names but we are not able to get the remaining names, sir?
I'm not very sure of that. I think our media and the way bureaucracy in this country functions has a lot to do with that. But as I said earlier also, that these are all rumors, okay? I mean, some names have come out, they say that we have got all the names, then after that also the government is not ready to disclose. That either means that they do not have the names, or they are not ready to disclose it for some reason. Now, you know, perhaps one of the reasons which is given is that we have our agreement with the Switzerland and this and that we cannot disclose names, and then we are into this, or they have given the information on this condition, but then we again, so government has been saying something, opposition has been saying something. That's all the politics of it, right? So even though, I mean, that's a plausible question कि 3 name कैसे आ गए और बाहर वो आ गए, but again that's something which is beyond the scope of anyone to answer as such, right? Yes.
The case of disproportionate assets income, what's your take on it?
What's my take on it in what sense?
Sir, like there are rules and regulations, but we know that the smooth implementation of the same hasn't taken on.
So again, the disproportionate assets, I mean, one is that you need to, you know, ensure that your laws are more stringent, and the implementation of the laws needs to be more stringent. As I said that, see, right now, again, दूसरी चीज ये है कि अगर आप डिस्प्रोपोर्शनेट एसेट के अंदर अगर आप किसी को, यू नो दैट मायावती हैज डिस्प्रोपोर्शनेट एसेट्स बट नथिंग स्टिल हैपेंड, राइट? So the reason for that is that the courts and the law enforcement in this country remains to be very poor. So you could not nail them down properly, and perhaps they went this thing. So I mean, what needs to be done in that case is that you need to strengthen the entire law enforcement regime in the country. That is the only way that disproportionate assets is equivalent to, you know, is the same as this problem again. So what you need to do is disproportionate assets, as I said, again happen through 2 reasons, right? One is that you have ridiculous tax regime in the country, and the second reason being that it's very easy to evade these taxes and so on and so forth, right? And plus the third one is that corruption still remains to be a major issue. So corruption को tackle करने के लिए लोकपाल and this and that. So see, again, whenever black money issue comes, try and look at it from 2 angles, as I said. Go to the basic definition of black money. Try and see that one is the illicit activities, how do we control down on illicit activities, and then the second way, try and talk about how the tax evasion can be prevented.
So can't
Right.
the court, Supreme Court for instance, take a suo moto case for
See, the thing is that what all do you want the Supreme Court to do? Finally, you have executive and the legislature in the country to do
but
something.
hasn't got this authority to take suo moto?
See, Supreme Court has done a lot of things which it didn't even have an authority for. So it might as well do this. Tomorrow when they will get frustrated about it, they might as well do this also. But I mean, that's so not the point. The point is that the executive and the legislature should do it in the first place. This is the responsibility of the executive to curb down on anything, right? Okay. Now let's move on to the next topic very quickly. This one is about the GST, right? So now again, as far as GST is concerned, there are a number of issues which need to be countered with respect to GST. One is that what are the proposals which are there in the GST bill? What is GST, right? So be very clear in terms of what exactly is GST, and what are the proposals which are there in the current bill which has been introduced in the parliament for the GST, right? Whether it is the setting up of the GST council, what will be the goods which will be exempted from GST, उसके बारे में पढ़ लीजिएगा. right? So I'm just skipping through again few of these things which are very factual in nature. Just go through them yourself and you'll be able to find them very easily in the notes. Then you know, what is the compensation which is going to be provided to the states, and what are the goods which are exempt from GST, what are the goods which are included, what other taxes would be subsumed in GST, right? And then what is going to be the composition of the GST council, what are going to be the powers of the GST council, and what kind of law needs to be introduced or amendment needs to be introduced in order to bring the GST or GST in the country, right? Now, first of all, talking about what are the possible benefits of the GST, right? One, I mean, all of you know that once you have single taxation regime which is introduced in the country, the entire country would become a single market, and because of that, doing business in the country would become much more easier, therefore helping us even move much further on the ease of doing business report of the World Bank, right? Setting up businesses, running businesses would be much easier in the country. Mayank talked about Startup India. Starting up is one part, but you have to also run a business in the country. Making India, one of the important things is that you come in here, make investments and set up your plants here, but then you have to finally run the business. And for that, you need to have a stable tax regime. You need to have a country-wide tax regime, something which has been adopted across the world. As far as GST is concerned, France was the first country to introduce GST, right? Now, currently, if you look at it, again, what another benefit of GST is that currently, if you look at it, the taxation rate, the indirect taxation rate through various taxes which are put on the consumer come to somewhere between 35 to 40%. Okay, and the GST, it is said, would bring it down to 16 to 17%, right? Then some people say that the inflation in the long term would be curbed down because of GST, because there would be better discovery of prices. Consumers also would not have to pay a lot of, they would not be the ones, those who will be bearing the burden of all the cascading taxes, right? Another advantage would be that right now in our country, we have the requirement for setting up warehouses in each and every state. Now, what is that? If I have a business, say I sell something in Uttar Pradesh, and my storage house or my warehouse is in Haryana. Now, if my storage house is in Haryana and if I have to sell it in Uttar Pradesh, I will need to give a particular tax, right? That amounts to 2% of the goods value, just because my warehouse is not present in that state. And because of that reason, all the businesses, major businesses in the country end up setting up their warehouses in each and every state of the country. Small warehouses with very less capacity, which is actually inefficient process. Your entire supply chain management actually grows many-fold, and therefore leads to a large number of problems in your entire logistics, right? What the GST is going to do is that since it is going to make the entire country a single market, and there is a very specific provision which is there, you will not have to have separate warehouses in each and every state to run your business, right? The amount of paperwork which would be there because of the complex taxation regime which exists in the country as of today would go down significantly. Yes, tax collection would go up. It's said that the evasion of taxes would reduce significantly, and it would actually lead to a lot of money being generated through tax collection once the GST is implemented, right? And some people also say that, as has been witnessed in the case of value added tax, when the value added tax was introduced at the state level in the country, a lot of states and the state governments and businesses had an apprehension that they are going to lose out a lot of revenue because of the implementation of the VAT. And in fact, government had measures that if they would have lost out any money, they would have been paid compensation for that. But what has actually happened as far as VAT is concerned is that the revenues went up instead of going down. their tax revenues went up, their tax collections went up, and all the apprehensions were put to rest. The same is said about the GST. States are very concerned, they have different concerns over it, and there have been a large number of concerns right from say last 7-8 years. But as the studies suggest, as a lot of experts suggest, these are merely concerns. And on top of that, government has made adequate or has taken adequate measures within the GST bill in order to ensure that any of the apprehensions of the state governments are are addressed properly. Right. Now, what are the concerns with regards to GST? One is that there is this entire political battle which is happening in this and that, that is another part of it. One of the major concerns with regards to GST, some people say that GST is a very regressive tax for a simple reason that it is an indirect tax. And you are going to increase say survey tax from 12 12.5%, 13% or whatever to 17% or 18% on all the services suddenly. And what is ultimately going to happen because of that is that the poor will face the brunt. Those who are better off in the society would be fine, but those who are poor, those who are not so well off would be the ones facing the brunt of this, because GST by nature being a indirect tax is regressive tax in nature, right? The other problem which people say is that the real estate sector might witness increased costs because of the introduction of the GST, right? The rates in the real estate sector might go up to as high as 8 to 10% because of the introduction of the GST. The third concern, I'll come to all the analysis of all these concerns and whether how fair they are or not. Again, you could be put up a question in the interview in terms of that some people say, so they might just ask you, have you heard about the GST? You will say yes, so and so. And then they will say that, okay, some people are concerned that the rates of the food items and rates of a lot of items and all the goods sold in the market and the services access would actually go up, and therefore it would lead to a lot of inflation in the economy. Do you agree with it or not? Right? Or do you think that GST is actually going to increase inequality in the country? Do you agree with it or not? Right? They might just ask you what are the advantages of GST. Some of you must have written debating as a skill or as an interest or a hobby in your DF, and they might just ask you that what do you think about GST? Give us pros and cons of GST. What are the concerns of the state governments? Are they valid? Right? These are some of the kind of questions which could be put up in the interview. Right? Another problem with the GST is that some people say that some of the luxury items might just go unescaped the GST. So one concern which is put forward by a lot of people is that they say that what would happen is you will introduce this GST, but instead of introducing a different rate of GST on different items, say luxury items or non-merit goods and merit goods and essential items, etc., you would have a single GST rate applicable across all the items. And because of that, some of the luxury or some of the harmful items, say something like a cigarette, might actually also have the same rate of GST as say the rate of GST which is being paid on some essential things such as a medicine or something like that. Right? Now, one more thing before I move on is the explanation as far as how the entire GST thing works, right? All of you would have heard that current regime is cascading tax regime, and we are going to GST is a value added tax regime. And how does this value added or value added tax regime differ from the cascading tax regime? Now I'll give you an example. Let's say that currently or the GST, if would be introduced, let's say there is a 6% GST on the services, right? And let's say 10% rate would be there on the goods. Okay. Now currently, or let's say that right now it is 6% as the service tax which you pay. मान के चल लेते हैं 12% नहीं मैं बता रहा हूँ, उसका रीज़न ये है वो कैलकुलेशन के लिए मेरे लिए ईजी है 12% भी कर दूँगा बट 6%, ठीक है. Now you go to a coffee shop, you go to CCD, you go and buy a coffee for 15 rupees. some people are laughing. 15 रुपए का तो मिलता ही नहीं है. 15 रुपए की चाय भी नहीं मिलती. So 15 rupees, कुछ 15 रुपए का क्या मिलता है यार, वहाँ कुछ मिलता है CCD पे, कहीं और कहीं मिलता है 15 रुपए का, कुछ नहीं मिलता. चलो 15 रुपए का सपोज करो कोई आइटम खरीदने गए मार्केट में. Now you have to pay a service you have to pay a service tax on that. You will be paying a 6% service tax. The CCD cashier will ask you for 15.9 rupees. Right? This is the amount of money which you will be paying. Now this 90 paise would be given to the government. ठीक है, to the tax authority. This will be the service tax which you are paying for. Now what will happen through something like a GST would be, let's say that the CCD person got the coffee beans from his manufacturer or some supplier at the rate of 10 rupees for this cup of coffee which you get for 15 rupees at CCD, right? ये 10 रुपए की coffee beans थी. So now as the rate of the goods is as the rates of so the rate for this particular service is 6%, he will be paying 60 paise. This will be a 60 paise thing which he will be paying to the manufacturer, right? So he will actually end up paying 10.6 to the manufacturer for this 10 रुपए. ठीक है, 10 रुपए की coffee beans. Now when he is selling this particular coffee for 15 rupees to you, he will still collect 15.9 from you because the GST remains to be 6% or the service tax remains to be 6%. But he will actually give only 0.9 minus 0.6 paise to the government. This is what is value added tax. So he will only be giving 30 paise as a tax to the government authority or to the public authority or taxation authority or whatever, right? Now the entire problem, as some people say, so I was saying that I'll come back to the critique of some of the positives and some of the negatives of the GST. Now one of the positives which people say is that there is going to be a greater tax collection which is going to happen, right? And the government is going to witness more money coming in through taxes once the GST is introduced. Yes, that is true, and tax evasion would get reduced, but at the same time a large amount of it would depend on how the consumers react. If the consumers still continue to not ask for bills from the vendors or from the sellers or the providers of the services, etc., GST would hardly help in curbing down on tax evasion as such, right? Now what could be a possible solution to something like this? Again, this all cannot be written in examination. Why I am saying or telling all of this is because this is something which can be told in the interview. Now there is one very innovative scheme which has been introduced by the Delhi government recently, right? So you have to take a photograph of any purchases which you have made. You have to basically go and get the compulsory bill from the vendor, and you have to take the photograph. There is an app which has been launched. You submit that those photographs on that app, and some of the lucky draw winners of this contest would get some amount or a huge amount of their shopping cost or whatever they have spent on that shopping be reimbursed by the government, right? So I hope you understand why Delhi government has introduced this. That is to actually increase its tax collection, because in order to win these prizes and this lucky draw and this and that and everything, people would go to the shops and ask for the bill for each and every petty purchase they make, whether it is 100 rupees, 50 rupees, 2000 rupees, 20,000 rupees or whatever, and they would submit it to the government, right? Now so therefore bill generate ho gaya, and once the bill is generated, that shopkeeper would also have to pay the tax to the government, right? And whatever money the government will get out of it, it will be able to route it, some very minuscule part of it will be given in form of some goodies or some prizes or reimbursement of the shopping expenses of the people. So this is one of the innovative ways, governance ways. So some of you those who belong to Delhi should anyways know that. Or in any case also, in order to prevent tax evasion, this could be one of the innovative ways. So you could suggest this, that okay, if there is a counter argument or there is a counter question which is put forward on GST, something like this could be suggested, right? Plus I was also suggesting that one of the advantages of GST is that the paperwork and so yes, some of the people have an issue with respect to inflation, right? Some people say that inflation is going to actually increase once the GST is going to be introduced, because अभी जिस सर्विस के ऊपर 12% टैक्स दे रहे हो वही आपको 19-20% देना पड़ेगा, right? Now the counter argument to that is that there is no doubt that the inflation is actually going to increase in the short term, right? There is definitely going to be an impact on inflation, and the economy might witness inflation in the short term, say a year or a two. But in the long term, over a medium term horizon or a long term horizon, say a 5 or a 10 year, inflation is actually going to come down, because this cascading burden of taxes, cascading taxes का जो burden था, that is going to come down because of the introduction of the GST. Plus also the government is going to have more tax collection, and therefore it could spend more on social sector and infrastructure and so on and so forth, and therefore improving the overall capacity of the economy, and therefore improving the overall efficiency of the economy, and thus leading to more production, greater supply of goods and services, and therefore bringing down the prices, right? So in the longer term, GST is actually going to bring down inflation and not going to get it up. But in the shorter term, yes, there is going to be a rise in inflation as far as the GST is concerned, right? Now, there are certain apprehensions which are there apart from that, which are there with respect to the GST. One is that there is going to be a substantial erosion of the state autonomy or the state power, because currently it says that the states actually have a say in the way they raise their taxes and the kind of things which they have, and plus the resource generation, etc. When you are going to have a single tax regime, it's going to take away a large amount of autonomy from the states. This is one of the apprehensions. Again, the way this could be addressed is by saying the same argument which was there in the case of the VAT, right? And the other thing is that if you look at the long term horizon, there is going to be increased tax collection which is going to happen for the states, and ultimately it is going to benefit the states only because it is going to rake up the money in their coffers, right? Another problem which is expressed with respect to the GST is that it is going to treat some of the states unequally. So states like, say, Manipur, or states like West Bengal, Odisha, which are actually non-industrial states, are going to suffer on at the expense of states like, say, Gujarat or Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu, which are highly industrialized states, because GST is actually going to help the manufacturer the most, is going to help the industrialized states the most, and the ones that are actually dependent on agriculture are still going to remain, are actually going to face the brunt of the GST. So this is also one of the apprehensions which is put forward with regards to the GST.
So,
Yes.
So on this point, in fact, the manufacturing states are apprehensive because it's a destination-based tax.
So, yes. So see, I'll tell you, the manufacturing states are apprehensive, and that's why they have also asked for a particular 1% levy to be given to them. That is true, but at the same time, what it is also said is that since the agriculture predominantly in our country is non-taxed, right? So the states, the business in these countries, that in these states which are non-industrial and non-manufacturing states, are actually going to face the brunt, because the GST is going to drive down the demand for products in this in these states further, and therefore going to impact their economy further, right? So what you are saying, the state governments as the manufacturers and the state governments have an apprehension with regards to that, but this is also one of the apprehensions that the non-manufacturing and the non-industrial states also have a particular this thing, and that's why where I was coming to, I was actually just coming to that particular critique, that there are several apprehensions which are there both from the non-industrial as well as the industrial state with regards to GST, and lot of it is unwarranted to a large extent, simply because when you see the experience of what has been VAT in the country, that is the single most proving factor that GST is also going to help the states get more money and therefore raise resources and therefore address all these concerns which exist as of today, right? And similarly with respect to that, as what he said, that as has been mentioned in your notes also, it says that a major sticking point that needs to be resolved is that the concerns of 1% additional levy which will be provided for manufacturing state for the 2 years. And obviously the Congress has opposed this levy for a simple reason that two of the most industrialized states in the country as of today, Gujarat and Maharashtra, fall under the BJP regime, right? And plus on top of that, another sticking point is with regards to the revenue neutral rate. You should understand what is the definition of revenue neutral rate. Can anyone explain what is revenue neutral rate, RNR, with regards to GST?
So the rate at which when all the products are charged, there will be no significant loss to the government.
Okay, so the taxation rate which will be imposed on the GST, which will actually not lead to any loss to the state government. So any compensation which is going to be there, going to be accounted for, is going to be called as revenue neutral rate. Now the government estimates say that the revenue neutral rate is going to vary somewhere between 20 to 23%. Some estimates say, a subcommittee which was formed last year said that it's going to be close to 27%. The finance minister has come on record and said that it's going to be close to just 20 to 23%. And globally, the revenue neutral rate varies from 16 to 20%. And then there is an Arvind Subramanian panel, who is the chief economic advisor that was formed, and that also said that the revenue neutral rate should anywhere be between close to 17 or 16 to 18%, if I'm not wrong. It's mentioned there. It says that it has recommended a revenue neutral rate of 15 to 15.5% with a standard rate of 17 to 18%, right? And it has also said that there should be no levy tax which should be imposed. So it says that the committee has recommended doing away with the additional 1% tax to be levied on the supply of the good, so over and above the GST, right? And also what the Arvind Subramanian panel which has been formed has recommended that there should be broad basening of the GST, and there should also be inclusion. Why do you want to exclude some of the items such as the petroleum, electricity, real estate and this and that and so many from the GST, and therefore all of this should also be made as a part of the GST regime, right? So these are some of the recommendations of the Arvind Subramanian panel. So what we have, I'll just to recap what we have talked about. What are the possible advantages? What are the possible negatives of GST? Another thing which you have to read about is that what are the apprehensions of the state governments with regards to GST? What is a critique of those apprehensions? Then the third and the most important thing being what are the various provisions which are going to be made in order to ensure the effective implementation of the GST, which includes ranging from the setting up of the GST council and bringing an amendment bill and passing it through half of the 29 state legislatures, and then you would have to have 2/3 majority in the parliament. What are the reasons for which you need to have 2/3 majority in the parliament? Please be very clear about that, right? Why do we need 2/3 majority in the parliament? Why is a constitutional amendment required? Why federal structure? Why? So you will basically be changing the taxation powers of the center and the state. Some of the taxation powers which are not present with the state are going to be given to them. Some of the taxation powers which are not available with the center are now going to be given from them to them from the states, right? Plus, just one last critique which is there of the entire GST regime in the country is that some people say that this GST is a complete eyewash. The reason for that is that when you go across the globe, you will see that there is a single GST which is applied across the country. In India, there is going to be a central GST, state GST and IGST, and therefore this is nothing but a mere revision of the central excise duty and the inter-sales tax and the VAT and nothing else. And therefore GST is just a mere eyewash to get in more investment into the country, which is not going to happen because people have caught the loophole. But that's not this thing. So this is just one of the last critiques which is put against the GST bill. Yes.
So I see a clarity. Sir.
Yes.
It is regarding, sir, how is it that manufacturing states, they are going to be at par vis-a-vis the other states. And if it is so, then the additional advantage of 1% away. I mean, sir, I'm not able to make it out as to how they would be.
I don't get.
So I'm asking, like, the manufacturing states, you said that they would be at an advantage.
Huh.
Still, the by the blame game, the
So see,
agriculture-
the thing is that there are two ways to look at it. As he said that the reason why the manufacturing states are complaining is that GST is actually going to affect them because of this particular reason. The other thing is that the non-manufacturing states or the non-industrialized states are crying foul because they are not here manufacturing. They are not saying that manufacturing states are going to get advantage or whatever. They are saying that we are actually going to be at a disadvantage vis-a-vis the non-manufacturing manufacturing states, simply because our economy is actually primarily agriculture and trade led, and the trade in our state is actually going to suffer on the account of the introduction of the GST, because the prices are going to go up, the demand for the prices are going to go down, and then there will be a whole lot of issues which will be created. But the reason is the reason for this apprehension is that there is very less clarity amongst these states, and most of it is nothing but a political rhetoric, right? That's it. ठीक है. Any other doubt? Yes.
You said that real estate might increase, prices might increase.
So, I'm not really aware of the economics of that, right? I confess that. I happen to read it as one of the apprehensions which has been put forward. I am not very sure that why that would happen or not. I am not really sure. Okay. If anyone has any explanation, perhaps you might help him out. Yes.
Sir, in the long run,
Hmm.
if there is the same taxation system in the entire country, in all the states, how will states with less infrastructure will attract businesses, sir?
So see, that is exactly what is one of the apprehension which is put forward by the backward states. That once you are going to have a single taxation regime, how are we going to have, we are given some kind of tax sops and so on and so forth. So what are we going to do? But again, what you have to understand is that once you start having a single taxation regime in the country, you will have ultimately lot more business coming into the country, and that would have some sort of a trickle down effect onto these states also, right?
Sir,
Yes.
but this one in Sanskrit of Article 246 says that states will also get power to levy, pass their own
Yes,
GST.
yes. So now that is also one of the apprehensions which is there with regards to GST, that they say that this might just remain more like a model GST and the states would have the freedom, and this is something which has not been addressed as such in the current law, but that is all which is there. I mean, that remains to be one of the loopholes of
Sir,
the
but then
present law.
entire GST.
See, I mean, the thing is that no, it will not go for a complete toss, because then see, in order to remain competitive, states will have to adopt it. See, once 5 or 8 states adopt it, the other 10 or the other 20 would also be forced to adopt it, for a simple reason that they would need to be competitive in this market. You get the point what I'm trying to say? Yeah, once I have implemented GST in my state, I would start witnessing more investment in my state, right? And plus the entire taxation regime in my state would be more channelized and this and that. And suddenly what would also happen is, you have to understand that GST जब implement होगा ना किसी state में, तो उसके जब revenues जाएंगे, दूसरी state जो नहीं करेगी, तो they will also see that यार the revenues for this particular state have gone up, so let us also implement this. So that is what the government is relying on, and more or less that is going to come into being is what they feel is going to happen. ठीक है? Yes.
When GST is about bringing a uniformity across all the states in the taxation regime, then why to talk about the state GST? Why at all is there a
So see, that's why I said that that remains to be this thing that you have IGST, a GST, a central GST and state GST. Perhaps this is just one of the steps to begin with, and might lead to singular GST being applied across the country in future. So that is, yes.
In the present bill, is there a provision for the state GST as well included?
So yes, so I mean, yeah, there is a state.
There, then, sir.
So that's what I said, that that is one of the major critiques. That's why मैंने end में बताया वो critique. Anyways, any other doubt? Yes.
Sir, if we are asked to say one single hurdle, should we say that Congress is saying for 17% and BJP saying 18%?
No, the biggest single hurdle which remains to be in the implementation of the GST is that states are apprehensive. You have to understand that, and various states, as I said, some of the non-industrialized states are apprehensive because of this thing. Because the reason is that there is still very less clarity. As I said, अभी बात हुई कि state GST है, फिर central GST, so there is very less clarity in how this entire thing is going to proceed ahead, right? Anything else?
Why was these set of items excluded of the GST? Do we have a reason for that?
Again, politics. So some of the states, yes, that's a similar reason which is there as far as some of the items being excluded, because some of the states states feel that these items are the ones which should remain under our control, alcohol and petroleum and so on and so forth, right? Okay. Anything else? Okay. Let's move on quickly to the 14th Finance Commission now, right? So the 14th Finance Commission, there have been a lot of recommendations. I'll just run through those recommendations, some of the really important ones. Not a lot of analysis as far as the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission are concerned. One question which could be asked with regards to is that what are the major 14th Finance Commission recommendations? All of you know that there is a change in the vertical devolution formula, right? Or not the vertical devolution formula, sorry, vertical devolution, right? It has been increased from 30 to 42, right? So there has been this increase has been unprecedented as far as the Finance Commission in the country is concerned. And then as far as even the horizontal devolution or the horizontal devolution formula between the states is concerned, for the first time 2 parameters have been introduced, and that is the 2011 population and the forest cover, right? What is the reason for the introduction of the 2011 population?
To encourage latest.
To encourage what?
To take policies so that we can reduce population with the Western team.
How is that making any sense? What could be the possible reason for introduction of 2011?
Realistic, sir, more realistic.
Realistic is contemporary.
Anything else?
Realistic.
So वही realistic. और कोई reason why 2011 population has been introduced? And yes, that is one of the reasons because of which the 2011 population has been introduced as a measure, right? The reason, and see, the thing is that as you all would know, 1971 को इसलिए लेकर चला जाता है so that you could actually encourage population control measures, but for the first time a very minuscule percentage of weightage has been given even to the 2011 population. One, as some of you said, that it's to make it more realistic and to actually get it closer to the realities of today. Plus, in a way, the second important reason is that you need to compensate the states, those who are having a large burden or chunk of population, so as to be able to compensate them, or because these are backward states on account of their population also, right? One is that. Now, second is the forest cover has been introduced for the first time. What are the reasons for that?
So many of the states with intense underdevelopment like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, they were getting less devolution vis-a-vis their requirement.
Why?
Sir,
But why forest?
Population and area, they didn't fare that well in those parameters. So accordingly, the devolution which they used to get was lesser.
Yes, sir, because if that's an encouragement so that they don't cut down their trees.
Okay, so basically, see, 7.5% of this forest cover has been given a weightage simply for a reason that the environmental concerns have actually come to the fore for the first time as far as the Finance Commission is concerned, and the reason is that they feel that a lot of these states, those who have huge forest cover, are actually paying on behalf of the country, because we need to maintain a forest cover of 33%. What is the current forest cover of India? Close to 23%, right? So now these states actually suffer because they have to maintain a particular forest cover, and therefore they should be so that they are encouraged to maintain them, so that they are actually compensated for maintaining that forest cover in order to fulfill India's national commitment of maintaining 33% forest cover. So these states would be further given a compensation by the Finance Commission, and so a particular measure of introducing forest cover as a parameter has been introduced in the 14th Finance Commission. Okay. Now, if you look at some of the recommendations of the Finance Commission, now there was a statement which had been made and which has been written in your text also, that there was a statement which was made by Y.V. Reddy, if I am not wrong, or someone. Okay, analysis mein tha, kahan tha. Anyways, so what it says is that the 14th Finance Commission recommendations are more quantitative, qualitative in the terms of their change rather than being quantitative. The reason for that is that even though you have increased the devolution of the funds from the center to the states from 32 to 40%, you have cut down significantly on a large number of centrally sponsored schemes. Some of them, and one of the most important of them being the ICDS, right? So you have done away with the ICDS and you have actually given it to the state governments to take care of on their own. Second, what you have also done is that you have actually done you have recommended, even the Finance Commission and otherwise also in the last budget, there has been delinking of the centrally sponsored schemes which has started to happen. Now that delinking has happened in two ways, as I said. One is that the government has said that we are actually not going to provide any kind of money from our coffers to the state governments, and the state governments need to take care of this centrally sponsored scheme on their own. And the second is that what the government has done is that it has decreased its contribution and increased the contribution of the state governments many folds, right? So earlier it used to be 75:25 and 90:10 in the case of the northeastern states and so on and so forth and all that. But now that share of the central government has been reduced drastically in a large number of the centrally sponsored schemes, right? So what has happened is that quantitatively, if you look at it, the amount of money which the state governments are going to get in the next year because, or in the coming years because of the increased devolution is not going to be a lot. But qualitatively it has changed, because qualitatively you have given more freedom to the state governments to decide how they spend each and every penny of this, right? So earlier you used to have a large number of tight funds which were either given through the centrally sponsored schemes or through a number of other ways, but now, or through the planned transfers which were there given by the Planning Commission. But now a large amount of money, because the Planning Commission is no longer in existence, and the only two ways of the transfer of the funds from the center to the state are going to remain as the centrally sponsored schemes or the money which is given directly from the line ministries to the state governments, and the second one is going to be the money which is going to devolve through the Finance Commission. There is hardly any going to be any central assistance which would be given for the state plans. Earlier there were planned transfers, as you all would know. There was special central assistance and normal central assistance and additional central assistance and all those kind of things. All of that has become almost redundant as the Niti Aayog has come into being, and you have also increased the devolution of the funds from the center to the states under the Finance Commission or the divisible pool of taxes, right? Now some of the upsides of having more untied funds obviously is that this money would be available to the state governments and they could spend it as they want. Say a particular state government has a priority of spending money on the education, or whether it is primary education, higher education, or the secondary education, they could spend it as per their needs. One famous example which I keep giving is, say for example, the state of Kerala. Now state of Kerala does not need to invest a lot into its primary education as of today, but what it needs to invest into is higher education. Therefore any money coming to state of Kerala under Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is actually useless for it, because it has that basic infrastructure existing at the primary level. But it does not make any sense to give 100 crore rupees to Kerala every year to construct some 200 schools or whatever, right? So rather that 100 crores could be given to set up, say, 2 universities in Kerala in next 5 years, something like that, right? Now Now there is a certain downside also of this qualitative change. What might just start happening is that something which you have witnessed in states like Uttar Pradesh, right? So people started distributing laptops. The government started distributing laptops with wallpaper of some political leaders which could not be even changed, right? And वो खुल बूट ही भाई बूट ही ऐसे होता था, नेताजी की फोटो से बूट होता था वो, right? So and that could not, and if you try and remove that, the system crashes. Right, so that is one thing. Plus apart from that, it has also been noticed that a large number of states have been involved in a lot of corrupt activities. In fact, the CAG report also points out to the fact that the maximum corruption which takes place in this country is at the level of the states and not the center. And therefore what might just start happening is that even though you might start giving untied funds to the state governments, all of this might be misused on a lot of frivolous expenses, such as distributing laptops or making parks for yourself, or distributing juicers, mixers, grinders, and so on and so forth, right? So that needs to be cut down on. Now another thing which has been mentioned by the Finance Commission is that they have said that the grants have to be distributed to the states for local bodies on the basis of the 2011 population data, right? And for the first time, the 14th Finance Commission, the Finance Commission has actually moved from calling the local bodies, and it has called them local governments. It might seem to be a very semantical kind of a change, but the change from local bodies to local government signifies that finally there is some acceptance of these this third tier of governance as an actual third tier of governance in our country, right? Now plus what it is said is that the 3% of the divisible pool of the taxes is going to go towards the local governments in form of grants and aids, right? 3% of the divisible pool of taxes. Now this 3% is going to be divided on the basis of two parameters. 90% population, 90% weightage would be given to the 2011 population, and 10% weightage would be given to the area of that particular what state, local body, what area of what, municipality का area, state, okay, fine. And see, and then what they have done is that they have divided this entire grants and aids in two categories. One is the performance, the one which are going to be dependent on the performance, and the other one which is going to be a fixed component. Now this is going to remain as 90:10 in the case of the rural local bodies or the Panchayati Raj institutions, right? And in case of the municipal bodies, it is going to be 80:20. Now how is this also a significant change? Because earlier these performance grants were 34%, up to 34% in some of the cases. What the Finance Commission has done is that it has therefore made this, it has delinked performance in a way from the delinked performance from the giving of the grants and aids to the local bodies, right? Now another significant recommendation is with respect to the public utilities, something which has been mentioned in your notes also. So it says that the 14th Finance Commission has said that as far as the discoms in the country and the distribution of the electricity is concerned, 100% metering needs to be achieved. I will be soon coming to the power sector reforms also, and this is one of the related issues, right? So it says that the current Electricity Act of 2013 does not have any penalty provision for delay which is made by the government in the payment of the subsidies, and therefore the act needs to be amended in order to facilitate the levy of such penalties, right? One is that. Second is that it is also said that there needs to be an establishment of the SERC fund, that is the State Electrical Regulatory Commissions which exist in each and every of these states, and there needs to be an establishment of these funds by the state governments. And the importance of these funds lies in the fact that they would ensure the financial independence of the SRCs, and therefore they could take some of the tough decisions against the discoms and some of these tough decisions in order to ensure the overall health of the discoms in the states, right? Now, then it has also suggested setting up of a railway tariff authority. There is a topic with respect to railway reforms also. I'm actually sorry, I forgot that. I'll be taking that also next time. So railway reforms is also one of the important topics that will be taken next time, and in fact उसमें बहुत सारी information है. विवेक देब रॉय कमेटी सेफ्टी के रिगार्डिंग, अभी रेलवे बजट भी आ गया है तो उसके अंदर कुछ क्या provisions है. We'll take up all of that next time, right? Then apart from that, it has also said that there needs to be a volumetric measurement by all the water regulatory authorities which are set up in the states. So any of the water regulatory authorities, some of the states have actually not set them up also. So first it says that set up water regulatory authorities, and second there has to be a volumetric measurement of any water which is being given for the irrigation purposes, because right now what is happening is that there is no measurement which is taking place, and because of that it is not only destroying the ecology of that particular area, because there is over salinization, because there is salinization which is happening and so on and so forth. And the other thing is that the ground level, the ground water table has actually gone down significantly. And apart from that, this is actually a wastage of a precious natural resource, right? So this is another recommendation. Another one very important recommendation made by the 14th Finance Commission is with regards to the maintenance of the SDRFs, right? So the state disaster rapid force disaster जो SDRF और NDRF होता है, right? So SDRF की maintenance के लिए 14th Finance Commission ने बोला है that it is, if the states are not able to take care of the SDRF, it is the responsibility of the central government to take care of the proper functioning of the SDRFs in the states, and therefore some sort of mechanism should be evolved to be able to devolve money to the state governments for maintenance of the SDRF. Similarly, it has talked the same thing about the NDRF also. It said that there needs to be creation of some pool of money through which the NDRF can function, and that needs to be either generated through the public and the private partnerships or through some CSR activities or whatever, but taxation or money, drawing money from the divisible pool of taxes is perhaps not the most fine way in order to maintain the NDRF in the country, right? Okay, so this is with regards to the recommendation of the 14th Finance Commission. Plus there is another recommendation which is very important with regards to the CSS. मैंने पहले ही बता दिया centrally sponsored schemes के बारे में, एक चीज़ और उसके अंदर थी. So see, if you look at it, there could be a question which could be asked on the centrally sponsored schemes also. So पहले तो ये बता, how many centrally sponsored schemes are there in the country today? 67, 66, whatever, right? So approximately 60. And how many does the government want to prune them down to? Right? So now the point which is there is that the reason for this is that what has been witnessed is that in last few years the data suggests that the union expenditure on the state list items has been anywhere between 14 to 20% between 2002-5 to 2005-11, right? So, and plus even on the concurrent list, I think this data has also been given in your yes, and it has increased on an average from 14 to 20%, and then on the concurrent list it has increased from 13 to 17% from 2002-5 to 2005-11. So what this shows is that there is a great amount of intrusion which is taking place by the central government in the domain of the state government, therefore not leaving them with any flexibility, and therefore when we talk of decentralized governance and decentralized government in the country, this is completely complete anti to that idea of promoting decentralized governance in the country. Right? There has to be more devolution of powers which should take place. There has to be more untied funds which should be provided to the state governments and not vice versa. Right? So therefore, for the first time, the Finance Commission has also made severe recommendations with regards to the restructuring of the centrally sponsored schemes. As I said, that it has said that there has to be a delinking of the centrally sponsored schemes which has to happen, and plus it has also acknowledged that there is a large amount of proliferation in the last few years, and it does needs to be controlled, and it only happen through providing states more autonomy in deciding how they spend their money, right? So this is with regards to the 14th Finance Commission and the recommendations made. Now let's move on to the next topic, which is the pulses. Okay. So now what has happened with regards to pulses? So see, किसी ने दाल खरीदी है थोड़े recent टाइम में? कितना 200 रुपए किलो पहुंच गया था बीच में. Okay. So what again, let's try and get into some of the basics of the rise of the pulses and pulse rates etc. in the country, right? So some of the major pulses of the country are tur, moong and urad, right? And among them gram actually remains to be the one which is most dominant of all of these. 41% of the pulses production in the country or the area dedicated is, or the production in the country is dedicated to gram. Now what is the problem? The problem is that there has been a rise in the pulse prices by almost 64% over the last 1 year, right? And some of the pulses even went up to almost 200 rupees per kg, as I said. And what this ultimately means for the population is that the protein input of the population is going to suffer. Our country already suffers from severe malnutrition. 40% of the children, as per the Hangama report, in this country are suffering from malnutrition. And the increased rates of pulses in a country like India, where a large percent of population is dependent on pulses for their protein intake, is severely going to dent the overall balanced nutritional diet of an individual, right? Now this is the problem statement. So if someone asks you that what is the problem which is happening with regards to pulses, these are the three things which you could say. One, the price rise. Second thing, you could say how it is going to have a socio-economic impact on the on the entire economy and the country, right? Now what are the reasons for this? See, one is that our policy with regards to the minimum support price is very cereal centric, right? Even though we have witnessed an increase of almost 50% in the MSP of the pulses over the last 4-5 years, the procurement procedure for the pulses remains to be almost non-existent as when compared to the cereals like rice and wheat, right? This is one thing. Second is that even though we have been able to achieve some sort of technology breakthrough in cereals such as wheat and rice etc. through the green revolution and this and that, nothing of that sort has happened as far as pulses are concerned. No technology revolution has happened, and therefore we do not have any high yielding variety of pulses and so on and so forth and all that. Now related factor to this is, because there has been no technology revolution which has happened in the pulses area, the land which is dedicated to the cropping of the pulses in the country is of significantly poor quality when compared to the cereals. So the most arid and the most infertile land is actually dedicated to the cultivation of the pulses in the country, right? So, and pulses remain to be a crop which are cultivated mostly in the drought prone regions of the country, ranging from Bundelkhand, Maharashtra में कहाँ, Vidarbh and Malwa Plateau and और ड्रॉट प्रोन एरियाज बताओ मेजर इंडिया के. रायलसीमा रीजन एंड सौराष्ट्र रीजन एंड यूपी में तो बुंदेलखंड बोल तो दिया, और एमपी में कहाँ, मालवा. और अभी frontline I saw yesterday in the market, and it has some really good articles on drought and this and that, तो वो पढ़ लो यार. I mean this is a severe problem for the country, and उसी पे ही वो उनका कवर जो उनका रिपोर्ट है वो उसी पे कवर स्टोरी उनकी ड्रॉट्स पे ही है. Anyways, so now there is since very infertile land and non-irrigated land and rain-fed land is actually dedicated for the cultivation of the pulses in the country, the production remains to be very low and the yield remains to be very low, and it remains to be a very risky crop because there is no dedicated or there is no assured supply of irrigation in these areas, right? Another problem is that some of these, again, states, one of the reasons for the rise in the price of the pulses has been that some of these states which are the major producers of the pulses in the country, which include Maharashtra, Karnataka, Rajasthan, MP and Uttar Pradesh, have actually witnessed droughts in last 2 years, right? And then there has been a change in the dietary needs of the country also, and there has been an increase in the protein intake, and therefore creating an demand pressure on the pulses in the country. Another reason is that there has been a lot of black marketing and hoarding which has been taking place, and the government has been unable to curb down on them. And the last reason is with regards to the import dependency of the country with regards to pulses. And what has happened is that we have been importing almost 20% of our demand of pulses, and unlike the cereals such as wheat, rice, etc., where there is a global surplus available, same is not the case with the pulses. And as soon as there is any rise which takes place in the demand of the pulses in India, there is an effect on the global prices also. There has been an increase of almost 3 times in the global prices of pulses, and therefore impacting the rates at which the pulses are being imported in the country, right? Now, another thing which you need to know is with regards to the procurement and the MSP policy is, surprisingly, the market prices for the pulses is higher than the MSP at which the state says that they are going to buy the pulses from the farmers. So this remains to be another anomaly, and the reason for that is that the pulse remain to be a high risk crop, and therefore because of that the market prices for such a risky crop again remain to be high. Now, what are the solutions which have been taken or which have 0% import duty on the pulses, right? Second, we have also restricted the exports of the pulses from the country, and so that all the demand could be met internally. Second, the third, the government has also tried to maintain or given measures for maintaining a buffer stock, and this maintenance of the buffer stock is mainly through the imports. Actually, government should have done it a year back, when they should have analyzed that we are going to face a severe drought in the country and there is going to be shortage of pulses. Our demand is on the high because of change in dietary needs and because of the change in or the increase in the per capita income in the country. But in spite of that, the government was sleeping, and then obviously the buffer stock was not maintained, and we suddenly faced a huge price rise in the pulses. Now, another solution which has been evoked by the government is the invoking of the ECA, that is the Essential Commodities Act. And first, what they have done is that they have ensured that there is liquidation of the stocks which are already existing with the suppliers, so that any stocks which are existing in the suppliers are flushed out in the market so as to increase the supply. And the third one is that they have also been cracking down on the black marketeers and the hoarders of the pulses, right? And then the last measure which has been taken by the government is to increase the MSP for the pulses, so as to increase or encourage more and more farmers to take up cultivating pulses, right? So these are some of the reasons some of the reasons because of which the price rise in the pulses has happened, and some of the solutions which are there. Now, if you look at what could be the possible solutions which need to be taken going ahead, because even these solutions have actually not helped curb down the rise in the price of the pulses, because they still hover at around 110, 120 rupees a kg in the market. Dal like tur would cost you 140 rupees a kg at a store, right? So one is that we need to bring in a trade policy change. Now, what is this trade policy change which we are talking about? That we need to start ensuring that the farmers are allowed to export pulses outside the country. Today, when you are just allowing them to sell their pulses just within the country, and where they know it's a very high risk crop, it's better if you start encouraging them with a transparent regime to discover the prices. They would be more encouraged to cultivate pulses. The area which is dedicated to the cropping or the cultivation of the pulses in the country has gone down significantly in last few years, right? In fact, one of the statistics which was there was that I just need to find that, I marked it somewhere, that it has इसमें कहाँ पे है, कौन सा पेज नंबर है? ऐसा पेज नंबर नहीं है इसका, 5th article. This is after black money. After, acha, okay, yes. So I think there was one very important statistics which is, yes. So this says that the consumption of cereals, if you look at it, it has fell from 69% to 62%. No, not this one यार, एक ना area के regarding था. Okay, so I am not sure, there was a statistic which was there with regards to how the area under the cultivation of the pulses in the country has gone down significantly in last few years, and the area under the cereals and the other cash crops such as sugarcane etc. has gone up. And also this is in a way also one of the reasons because of which we have been facing frequent droughts in areas of Maharashtra etc. See, you have to understand that even though droughts are said to be a natural phenomena, they are actually man-made, right? The reason for that is that droughts are, I mean, if you would have read the NCERT, I hope all of you have read the NCERT, there is first shortage of water, right? So drought can also occur in any area where there is ample rainfall which has taken place, right? It can occur in an area where even the rainfall is even 120 centimeters. The reason for that is that if the crop which I have grown requires 200 centimeter of rainfall, and the water received through the rain is only 120 centimeters, my crop will still fail. And I might have 50 centimeters of rainfall and still not have a drought, right? Now what has happened is that in Maharashtra and in the belt around Maharashtra, people have been encouraged to grow crops such as sugarcane and cotton, which are water guzzling crops, which are water intensive in crops, right? Something like a sugarcane requires gallons and gallons of water, and because of that the entire cropping pattern in these states have changed. Earlier the cropping pattern used to be the cultivation of the pulses which required very less water and which were less riskier. Now because of the cultivation of sugarcane etc., suddenly the entire agriculture pattern has changed, and because of that you have put yourself at more risk, right? So this also needs to be understood. Droughts are majorly man-made and not natural phenomenon as such. Okay. Now another measure which could be introduced in the future in the by the government in order to curb this problem is that we need to have a better management of the supply gap. That could be that we could allow the import of the pulses at not only zero duty, but also ensuring that we maintain a proper buffer stock in advance whenever we know that we are going to face a lean season of rainfall or lean monsoon is going to be witnessed. Thirdly, the procurement by the government needs to be at par for the pulses as is in the case of the cereals, and which I said earlier also is almost non-existence. And then you need to encourage commodity exchanges and commodity trading in pulses in order to ensure better price discovery for the pulses. And the third and the last thing has to be, you have to encourage technology interventions. We need to have a green revolution for pulses also in the country, and that could only happen through a lot of money going into research and development at some of our premier institutes, which range from the ICAR and so on and so forth, right? ICAR and the IARI and all these institutes. ठीक है, Indian climate resistance वाला एक जो है institute, right? NICRA, I think, National Institute for Climate Resistant Agriculture, right? All these measures need to be introduced in order to curb the problem of growing prices of pulses in the country. Now, yes.
Explain commodity exchange, how will it help?
Commodity exchange will help because there will be a greater transaction which will take place, and therefore the better discovery of the prices would take place in the market, and the farmers would be able to get the right kind of price for their produce.
But hoarding, we know.
Hoarding, yes. So again, I mean, hoarding and
Price that will take, that will also induce price rise.
that will reduce price rise also, for a simple reason that once the farmers start getting a better market price for their products, more of them will be encouraged to take up farming or cultivating pulses, right?
Hedging risks, this is what.
Yes.
So, but inflation concerns are there for it because they will also.
Okay, so see, again, your commodity market has to be regulated. You cannot let it on its own. That's why it is regulated. But at the same time, you have to have. There is a reason why you need to have commodity markets, and that is because if you have trading in it, you can have better price discovery for items. भाई अगर मैं commodity में trade कर पाऊँगा, then you know because of that कहीं पे shortage है, कहीं पे supply है, so you are able to better discover the price and get a better price for the commodity. ठीक है? Okay, right. Now let's move on to the next. So these are last two topics. Some of how many of you have the interview in the first week? Okay, very few. Okay, someone told me there is India-Pakistan match also at 7 p.m. today, so we'll finish in next 15 minutes. Okay, so right, this one is about the power sector reforms. Actually, this is not more so about the power sector reforms, but about the general state of the power sector in the economy, especially important for those who come from electrical engineering background, those who have worked with any of the NTPCs and the BHELs and the GAILs and any of the power related companies, etc. Right, very crucial for them, and otherwise also generally what is the power mix which the country should have, and so on and so forth. Now some of the quick facts about the power sector in the country. We are the 5th largest producer of electricity in the world, and by 2016-17 we are going to have a requirement of 155 gigawatts, right? And our current power producing capacity is close to 2,84,000 megawatts, right? And plus now if you look at the power mix which we have in the country, 70% of our power generation comes from the thermal sector, around 27% from the non-conventional energy, and just around 2% from the nuclear energy. Out of this 27% from the non-conventional sources, 15% is from the hydro sources, right? Now talking about the hydro sources, I hope you have these, ये इसमें भी लिखे हुए हैं शायद statistics, but मैं सिर्फ synopsis के लिए बता रहा हूँ, ठीक है? Now you could just note them down also. Now as far as the hydro power is concerned, we have almost 148 gigawatts of potential in the hydropower sector, but we have realized only 42 gigawatts till date. A major reason for that has been that land acquisition remains to be a key issue. Second, the amount of environmental damage which the hydropower project cost is huge, and therefore we have not been able to invest a lot into these projects because of anticipated environmental losses, right? And then plus there are a large number of interstate water disputes also, and because of that the hydro water power project remain to be a distant dream in the country. Now what needs to be done as far as hydropower sector is concerned? First, we need to have run of the river water projects. As you all would know that, you know, how run of the river water projects, how do they differ from the conventional water, hydro power plants, and how are they more ecologically sustainable. Second is that we need to have micro hydro power plants set up in different parts of the country. This could, especially when we talk about states like Arunachal Pradesh, states in the other states in the northeast, Uttar Pradesh, and some of our hill states such as Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir, we need to install very small 10 megawatts, 5 megawatts, 1 megawatt kind of hydropower projects which could be off the grid, right? Also do read about what is off the grid power project, what is on the grid power project, what are the benefits of off the grid, what are benefits of on the grid. This is, again I am repeating, especially very important for any of the electrical electronics engineering student, any आपने चाहे 8 साल पहले पढ़ा हो, 4 साल पहले पढ़ा हो, अभी पास आउट हुए हो, किसी भी कंपनी में ऐसे काम किया हो, दिस इज़ वेरी क्रूशल. ठीक है. नाउ सेकेंड इज another trend which has been noticed in the power sector in the country is that there has been an increasing involvement of the private sector in the power sector, in the power generation. In the 11th plan only there was an increase of 39% as far as the contribution of the private sector in the power generation is concerned, right? Now these are some of the statistics and numbers. What you should just be aware of them on a broad level while you are walking into the interview hall. Now what are the challenges which are facing the power sector in the country? This is what is more important. First of all is the transmission and the distribution losses. Our transmission and distribution losses are close to 32%, whereas when you look at the other countries in the world average is actually somewhere close to 4 to 5%, right? So 32%. A major reason for that remains to be so one, okay, so see, one is that you have theft which takes place, right? So that is there. Second is also because if you look at it, now this is very interesting, the major power plants in the country are actually located in which part of the country? South. So the south and the southwestern parts of the country, or the western and the southwestern parts and the western parts of the country is where the major power plants of the country are located. And what is the source or the raw material which is required for the running of these thermal power plants? Coal. And where are the majority coal mines located? They are located in the east, right? So आपका जो पहला ही supply chain में जो link है, transportation of coal from the east to the west and from the east to the south. South के अंदर फिर भी there are a few coal mines which are there, but when you move towards the west there are hardly any coal mines. So therefore you have to also understand that the major industrialized states of your country are actually in the west. It's a chicken and egg problem. You have Gujarat and Maharashtra. They have developed because there was enough adequate power and infrastructure which was available there, plus because they have developed over there, there is again more electricity generation which takes place in these states. So one is that. Second is that as of today also, if you would see the again as I said, the power generation takes place at a certain distance from the industries, and because of which the power losses also happen due to the heat losses and the transmission losses which are there, right? So there are transmission losses in the country are also high, very high. One is the material which has been used in the wires, right? What material is used in the wires in India? Aluminium, copper. किसके अंदर लॉस ज़्यादा होता है, एल्यूमिनियम कॉपर? एल्यूमिनियम और कॉपर, हाँ, एल्यूमिनियम में ज़्यादा लॉसेज होते हैं. तो why don't we use copper then? It's costlier, right? Okay. So now that, see, so as I said that the transmission and distribution losses remain to be one of the major concerns as far as the power sector in the country is concerned. It is said that even if there is going to be a 1% decrease in the transmission and the distribution losses, we are going to save up as much as 800 megawatts of electricity, right? One is that. Second is the health of the DISCOMs in the country is very poor, partially due to the populist politics which has been adopted by most of the states and the state governments in the country, right? And apart from that, again because of the poor policies and the poor infrastructure which exists in with these discom companies, and also because of lack of technical expertise, right? The third important factor, and one of the very important factors, is the fuel availability. Most of our power plants are actually running below their full capacity today, simply because we do not have adequate coal available in the country. So I told you that how there is a complete transportation of coal which is taking place from the east to the west, and you could imagine that there would be transportation losses which would be occurring here also. In fact, the government has been trying to promote the power plants right at the coal pits. So that is called as captive coal pits, right? There will be coal pits which would be captive to the that particular power plant, right? Okay. So the CIL, or the Coal India Limited, which is the largest producer of the coal in the world, has been only producing 65% of the coal required by the thermal power plants in the country. And recently the Minister for Power and Renewable Energy and Coal, Mr. Piyush Goyal, made a statement that by 2017 the government or the country is actually not going to import any coal. And in last one and 2 years of him being in the power, he has been able to tackle this problem substantially, right? Another problem with respect to the power sector is the aging plants in the country. Most of the plants were set up at the time of the independence, right? And therefore the equipment and the infrastructure is outdated, and because of that they function at a very low efficiency, and therefore again causing a lot of problem for the power sector, right? Land clearances and environmental issues, mining issues, and the coal allocation and the cancellation of the coal blocks and all these things also remain to be one of the major concerns for the power sector in the country. Apart from that, there are a large number of interstate disputes which I had already talked about, and plus what has also happened is that there has been a general inflation in the economy and so on and so forth. The interest rates have gone up in last few years, and because of that some of the projects which had been started a couple of years back or 5 years back have now actually overrun their costs. These projects have, or these projects for setting up the power plants have overrun their costs because the interest rates have gone up, and have gone up significantly, right? Now these are some of the reasons for, or some of the problems and the challenges of the power sector in the country. What are the government initiatives? The first and the most important one being the UDAY, right? That is the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, again a brainchild of Mr. Piyush Goyal, the power minister. So there is going to be restructuring of the debts of the discoms in the country to a tune of almost 4.3 lakh crores, right? And they say that another important provision of this is that there is going to be an improvement of the efficiency of the power of the discoms in the country, and the operational costs are going to be brought down significantly, right? And plus the government has also said that under UDAY there will be the state governments would be allowed to issue bonds in order to recover money for the debts of these discoms, right? And another thing which it has done is that in order to get the state governments to adopt UDAY and the discoms to adopt UDAY, it has said that there is a Deen Dayal, what is the scheme? Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, right? So the states are going to get added incentives, and they are going to get added additional priority funding under the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana if they are going to perform well on the UDAY scheme and they are going to adopt it. One is that. Plus as an incentive, any of the coal which would be produced as an additional because of the generation of the additional capacity for producing coal in the country would be supplied at a cheaper rate to these states, those who adopt UDAY, right? And apart from that, it says that yeah, and yeah, so this is one major scheme which is there. Plus apart from that, the government has also announced a building up of 5 new ultra mega power plants, UMPPs. The definition for the UMPPs is anything which has a capacity of producing more than 4,000 megawatts of power, right? And these are going to be in a plug and play model. The plug and play model means that you are going to get all the clearances and the license and everything, and then the auction for the coal mines is going to take place. So you just come and set up your plant and you will be able to get access to the coal and to the other raw material, right? So these are going to be set up under the plug and play model, right? Then apart from that, the government has also announced that there would be they have revised their target for the renewable energy generation, and they have said that 10 lakh megawatts of renewable energy is going to be generated in the country by 2022, right? Plus there have been a number of new initiatives which have been taken by the governments at the state level also. For example, the government of Telangana has set up an incubation center to encourage research and technology and research and development in the area of renewable energy, right, and non-conventional energy. And then apart from that, there has been a Coal Mine Act of 2015 which has been passed, and the major objective of the act remains to be to ensure continuity in coal mining operations in the country. Okay, all of this is just mentioned in your notes, but I am repeating it to tell you that these are some of the crucial points which you could just remember, and यहाँ पे आप आए हो तो आपको ये याद रहेगा, ठीक है. And plus the government has also launched a couple of other initiatives, especially with regards to the promotion of the solar power in the country and solar power generation in the country, both off grid as well as grid connected, right? The off grid is going to be at a local level, and the grid connected is obviously going to be at a much larger scale at the regional level, right? So this is about the power sector. Any doubts on this? Okay, now let's move on to the last topic from my end. This is the gold monetization scheme and the other steps which have been introduced by the government with regards to the gold. ठीक है, मेरे को ये बताओ, what are the objectives of this particular initiative? कहाँ पे है, कौन से पेज पे है भाई? हाँ, लास्ट कहाँ है? इसका नंबरिंग होना चाहिए ना. After yuan. Okay, yes. So what are the objectives? So there are 3 new schemes which have been introduced by the government. One is the gold coin, the other one the gold monetization scheme. Gold, there has been a question which has already been asked this year. Now, what were the objectives with which this particular scheme was introduced? That we have a large amount of idle gold which is lying in our country. We have huge amount of current account deficit, and the major import bill of this country, 2 of the major items are oil and gold, right? Now India remains to be one of the largest importers of gold in the world, and in order to ensure that whatever gold is lying idle within the country, to liquidate it, to get it into the market, and to curb the demand for imports of gold from outside, these 2-3 particular schemes have been introduced, right? As far the sovereign gold bond is concerned, it is a scheme which, what are the provisions of the scheme?
Not taxed.
Not taxed.
Not tangible. It is not gold. Basically, it's in the form of bond, paper bond that is being traded in the market and is strictly according to.
क्यों?
Because less import will be there and government himself will make it.
What is it? First explain me what is sovereign gold bond.
People who try to invest in gold as a form of investment, treat gold as an investment, can have an investment that is not in.
Okay, so this is going to be a paper gold in a way, right? And people need not buy physical gold, and in order to invest in gold, they need not go and buy it from the bullion market or from wherever, and they could buy it directly from the bank, right, and get the same amount of returns, or same amount of returns, same.
That will be the price at that time when they will recover.
Okay,
Same price,
right.
market
So,
price.
and what is the objective of the gold monetization scheme?
To bring back the idle gold lying in the
Unlock the.
Okay.
circulation.
And what about gold coin?
The amount of gold that would be collected through gold monetization scheme that can be used into some productive manufacturing of gold coins. That-
Productive कैसे हुआ manufacturing of gold coin?
Because anyway, what would we be doing with that gold once it gets collected through the gold monetization?
Again, jewelry shops and
Physical gold
they can
don't
rechannelize it.
Reduce the import burden of those bricks or bars, gold bars.
Okay, right, fine. Now, when you talk about the demand for the gold, so it's been written that demand for the gold puts serious pressure on the import bill of India, and the major reason for which the gold monetization scheme and all these measures have been introduced have been to reduce the demand for the yellow metal and to bring in circulation the physical lying idle gold with the households, right? Now, what are some of the most important benefits which are going to accrue to the economy and to the various stakeholders in the economy? It's been very well given in your notes, but I'll just read it out and just summarize it for you. Consumers, for the consumers, first of all, there is going to be fall in. There is going to be the idle gold is going to come into the market. There is going to be a supply of gold which is going to happen, and therefore the gold prices are going to go down. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, the government didn't need to introduce this scheme to get the prices of the gold to fall down, because globally the prices of gold have actually fallen down in last few months. What is the reason for that? Okay, so the slowdown in the global economy, right? Now, but can I say that slowdown in the global economy, one of the reasons is the fall in the commodity prices, or is commodity prices a symptom of the global economic slowdown?
Both both. There are other reasons also for lowering of quantity.
Okay. So it's a chicken and egg problem only again. I mean, and see, but majorly it's a signal of a global economic slowdown, that there is very less demand which is there, and therefore the commodity prices have fallen down, right? Okay. Now, the other reason is that the consumers could actually start earning some money for whatever gold is actually lying in their home, rather than just expecting the market prices to get them some returns on it, right? And the other thing is that again, against theft, so any of this gold, they could actually be going and giving it to the bank, or get sovereign gold bond also. Sovereign gold bond agar koi chura bhi lega, so it's recoverable. But once, so therefore the it's a protection against theft and security measures as against the conventional gold or keeping of gold at home, right? And another interesting fact is that it will also ascertain the purity of the gold which is held by the people, simply for a reason that as a part of the process which you would read, यहाँ पे एक टेबल दिया हुआ है, सॉरी फ्लो चार्ट दिया हुआ है. सो जब आपको सबसे पहले आप जब गोल्ड अपना डिपॉजिट करने जाओगे इस पर्टिकुलर स्कीम के अंडर, you will the purification or the purity of your gold would be verified, right? And this also remains to be one of the added advantages of the gold monetization scheme. Plus, one of the other advantages of the gold monetization scheme for the consumer is that any of the earnings which are going to happen under this are going to be exempt from the capital gains tax and the wealth tax and the income tax. I'll just come to in a bit that there is some other problem with this actually. Now, as far as the government of India is concerned, obviously the CID is going to go down, the current account deficit, right? And then it would also mean that the overall economic health of the country and the investor sentiment is going to improve, and therefore going to get in more money into the country, and therefore lead to greater investment and lead to a greater economic growth. What about the banks? Because banks are the intermediaries again here as far as the collection of the gold and then all those things are concerned. So the banks could actually be helped by maintaining their cash SLR requirement because of the availability of the gold. So therefore they would not need to necessarily invest in any of the government securities etc. in order to maintain their SLR requirements. They could simply get this gold from the consumers. One is that. Second is that they could lend it to the jewelers and get some extra cash, because the interest rate which is going to be given to the consumers and the interest rates which they are going to charge from the jewelers, there is going to be a certain difference of kitna different 1 to 2% between the interest rates, and therefore they would be able to get some liquid cash out of this, right? And then also banks can also buy and sell on the commodity exchange, and therefore be able to get the gold mobilized, right? Now, how big a success has the gold monetization scheme and these schemes been? Well, if you look at it, as been mentioned in your document also, in the first few weeks or the 2 weeks, the scheme attracted only 400 grams gold, right? Just like the 30 कितना है, मेरे से बोला नहीं जाता वो कितना है, 3,370 crores 770 था, अच्छा सॉरी 3,770 crores वाला ही है 400 ग्राम गोल्ड, ठीक है. सो दैट्स लाइक 10 grams इज वन दिस थिंग. सो आई थिंक 40 लोग आके दे गए होंगे अपना, एक ही आदमी दे गया होगा, पता नहीं कौन दे गया. सो दैट वाज देयर. सो इट सेज दैट one of the reasons for that has been that there was a shortage of the centers for collection, right? Another apprehension which was always there with regards to this particular scheme was that people might just be afraid of actually going and depositing their gold in the bank, for a simple reason that they would be asked these questions. They have already been asked to fill these KYC forms, and therefore they would come under the radar of the tax authorities, right? And then there is also a certain amount of sentimental value which is attached with gold, especially in form of jewelry, right? So it passes on from generation to generation, and in a country like India, where there are a lot of cultural ties and family ties and this and that, this might actually be a very failed idea, because people would not want their jewelry to be converted into some other form when it is given back to them. Also, do remember that as far as the particular scheme is concerned, you will actually get your returned money in form of the gold only, right? So if you have given say 10 grams of gold, and then you will get some added gold into it in the gold form only when you get back, right? And so yes, and what else has been a challenge? So yes, so these are some of the challenges which have been there with the gold deposit scheme, and what needs to be done in order to make it more attractive. First and the foremost, you need to ensure that you have to connect the ordinary banks with the buying of the. So it says that simultaneously efforts must be made to link ordinary bank accounts such as saving bank accounts and recurring deposit to the gold also, so that you could actually have interconvertibility be made very easy within your existing accounts. Some of the banks are already actually offering these services, but it's needed that all the banks start offering such a service, right? Now another suggestion which needs to be incorporated is that the interest rate or the rate of return which is being provided under the gold monetization scheme, as per some of the people, is very less, and therefore needs to be increased, because when you inflate anything, when you adjust anything like for inflation, it is actually not going to give any substantial amount of money back to the people, right? And then there is also a question of that there needs to be a perfect liquidity in the gold monetization accounts, where the consumer can choose an equivalent such as cash as the exit option. Right now he does not have an exit option in the form of the cash, he can only get it back in form of the gold, right? And therefore this will also make the entire handling of the gold more safer and more liquid, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things with regards to the gold monetization scheme, right? Yes. So I mean, see that again, political will has to be there. That there is no, you cannot do anything, because the thing is that a lot of other elements come into it, and there is obviously a lot of idle. Plus on top of that, there has to be so a practical solution if it would be asked, from the interview point of view could be that ultimately people are the ones, those who are donors to these temples. So they have to start building pressure on the temple authorities that the gold which is lying idle with you is actually causing a lot of harm to the country in a way. So you might as well use it in some way to get it back into the economy and therefore help the entire national economy. Right? That's perhaps just one of the practical suggestions which could be made with regards to that. Otherwise, another thing is that this is completely a problem of political will. Right? Okay. One small announcement which I wanted to make was that Vision IAS has partnered with My Parliament. My Parliament is an organization which is into creating awareness amongst youth about the public policy and trying to bridge the gap between government and the youth. Now, on the 12th and the 13th of March of 2016, there is going to be a 2-day event which is going to happen, and where the simulation of the Indian Parliament is going to happen, right? And the topic of discussion would be the budget of 2016 and 17. There was a similar event which had been conducted last year, and it had got a recognition from World Bank because this was perhaps the only second initiative in the country to promote budget literacy at such a huge scale. Now, there are two, so if you want more information, you could log on to the website www.myparliament.org and could get more information. Even though the enrollment for the session has been closed down now, but in case if there are any exceptional applications which are made, they might be considered. One is that. Second is that there the organization has also partnered with an organization known as CBGA, that is Center for Budget and Governance Accountability. They come out with an analysis of the union budget overnight. Say for example, if it's going to come out on 29th, they are going to come out with an analysis on the 1st of March. What would be happening is that there would be a telecast of the live telecast of this particular analysis, which would be conducted by few of the team members of the CBGA. And since some of you asked me that budget analysis and economic survey, both of these things are also going to happen as a part of the training session for the participants of the My Parliament session which is there. Plus, this would also be open to any of the students of Vision IAS, and it would actually be open to everyone. This would be live telecasted on the link would be there, and we would also be providing the link on the Facebook page of the Vision IAS, right? So you could access it, and if you need any more information, you could get it from there. So this could be beneficial in two ways. One, if anyone wants to participate. Second, if you are just looking at it purely from an informational perspective, there would be analysis of the economic survey, analysis of the budget of 2016-17. Plus, there will be a couple of other sessions which will be there from the senior members of the academia from IIM Ahmedabad and a very senior Indian Civil Account Service officer. They are going to take session on how the budget is made and what are the basics of budget in India. How do you read a budget? What are the things which are to be expected out of the budget of 2016-17. So you could attend them, as all of this would be an open session which would be live telecasted, right? So this is about it, and plus just a minute of yours before we disperse. So some of the topics again I am repeating, which are going to be taken up in the next class is going to be the agricultural situation, the global economic slowdown, the one rank one pension, the Kelkar committee and the infrastructure and the PPP issues, the IPR related issues, the Chinese economic slowdown, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the other mega FTA deals which are being signed across the world, and the Skill India initiative, and the 7th Pay Commission, and the reforms in the railways, the new GDP methodology, and yeah, this is going to be railway reforms is going to be there, and railway budget is also going to be a part of that.
Sir,
Yes.
to add blue economics possible?
Blue economy, if it would be taken in the international relations class. It's going to happen tomorrow, so you could suggest to the faculty, right?
Sir, when will be your next class?
My next class will be mostly next week. Okay, thank you.